Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, it's time for a New Mexico or a legislative update for the United States and for New Mexico. And I wanted to bring this up first to remind everybody just how much the government hates us. If you didn't hear, we had a Chinese weather balloon / spy balloon that was spotted in the U.S., and they didn't shoot it down until it got to the East Coast. Now, why I say the government hates you isn't the delay in which they shot down this weather balloon or spy balloon. It's more so to the fact that they used a Sidewinder missile, which cost $381,000 approximately, and a $216 billion jet. Yep, that's right. $1 billion with a B. So all told, we probably spent $500,000 to shoot down a Chinese spy balloon. If that doesn't set your teeth on fire or raise the hair on the back of your neck, you're not paying attention. That debt clock keeps ticking away, but the problem is the people, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, in the House and the Senate, or in the Roundhouse, they don't care about spending. They don't care about your tax dollars. They're selling you out. So let's start talking about what's going on in the Roundhouse and what's going on nationally. To emphasize the point that there are, the government, whether it's state or local, or federal, they hate you. Right now, if you're a fan of the 2A, we're facing 30 plus bills nationally that have to deal with guns, and about 8 or 9 locally at the state level in New Mexico that deal with guns. Now, there's a theme amongst them all. That theme is that they're looking at assault weapons bans, magazine capacity bans, age restrictions in New Mexico for anyone purchasing a semi-automatic firearm or a firearm of they have to be 21 is what they're trying to push for. Age restrictions or safe handling and storage, both nationally and locally. And most and weirdly is waiting periods. Now, we've had this at the national and at the state level, and it did zero good. In fact, what it actually did was it led to people needing to defend themselves, and they couldn't. What happened with that is we have many, many people that had to, died because they couldn't defend themselves. Now, I'm talking about, domestic violence stuff. That's where I see the biggest problem being. They've also have red flag laws that they're trying to go after. We have them in New Mexico. This can be beneficial if you think about it from the leftist term, in that they could possibly stop some gun violence. However, in practice, having lived under a couple years, I think 5 years now, that this has been a thing in New Mexico, it isn't really used for that. And law enforcement has other tools for that. But what you'll find in New Mexico and at the national level, and that's why I circled this right here, is there are a few senators and representatives, either nationally or federally, that we need to call out. Locally, these same senators and representatives in the Roundhouse, statewide, that I mean, not locally as in local municipal elections, but state elections, they're the ones that are pressing pretty much all the gun restriction bills. At the national level, what they're looking at is getting, the counter is that they're trying to get rid of the ATF's ability to make law without going through Congress. They're trying to strip away powers of regulation for short-barreled rifles and short-barreled pistols, short-barreled shotguns, not pistols. But the same counters we see in New Mexico, we're seeing at the national level. So this leads me again to believe that our governor is trying to get on some sort of cabinet position, and that's why she's now using politics in New Mexico to go after gun rights. And she's done that through calling out her cronies who are in the roundhouse so they can make this a big deal. In New Mexico, we're also facing something that I have mixed feelings about, and it has to do with immunity for cops, implicit immunity or whatever it's called. Now, I have a problem with that because after seeing this stuff with Tyree Nichols, I don't necessarily believe that cops shouldn't be held to the same standard as normal citizens. I've never really believed that, but now I think that if they screw up, we definitely need to hold their feet to the fire, because the blue, no matter who, or the blue guys, I hate to say it, man, but the guys that are going to come for your guns are these guys. And if you don't believe me, look what happened during COVID. And I keep beating that same horse because I keep calling out the lawmakers that keep saying that I'm all about freedom and I'm all about the 2A. And we're actually at a point now where I don't know that we can trust you anymore because you back down. What makes me think that you're going to stand up for us, for any of us in the 2A, when it comes down to it? At the federal level, I highlighted this again, where they're talking about import bans and restrictions. They're going hard and heavy, both at the national and at the state level, for gun confiscation, gun restrictions, gun anything. And it's usually the same people. And if you come from a blue wall state, that's what I'm going to call them from now on, like Illinois or New Mexico, you can bet that our reps will sell you out and go ahead and sponsor these bills. On a lighter side of note, kind of a victory for 2A guys, but it depends on how you feel about the subject. In Oklahoma, they had a hearing, and it was ruled in the Oklahoma Supreme Court that cannabis users cannot be restricted from owning firearms. Now, I understand some of the boomer guys and some of the gun guys going, wow, I don't know if I agree with this or I'm cool with this. But having inhaled when I was in high school, I can tell you that it's no different than alcohol. And while I think we could spend a lot more resources trying to go after the fentanyl than marijuana, what I really bring this light up for is because the cannabis guys are winning. And us 2A guys have been in the fight for a long time, and we keep getting our asses kicked. They keep whittling away our rights little by little, but yet the cannabis guys have ignored enforcement by the law. That's the best way to put it. And now it seems to be a accepted thing in society. Now, being a total ANCAP now, after losing entirely my entire faith in anything the government can do, I honestly think that we should start taking cues from the cannabis industry and cannabis users by just ignoring the stupid laws that aren't there. Now, you do you. I'm not a lawyer. I just see more and more that there's an infringement here that keeps going. And no matter what we say, if we're behind the blue wall, they don't care. They're going to make us a criminal anyway. They keep making laws time and time again, and no one can keep track of them. If you're not big, politico, I guess is what the technical term is, where you spend a lot of time researching how Congress or how the law is supposed to work, or you haven't spent a lot of time in the political space but got into politics because it was pop culture, that's where we're at now. That's why there's so many culture war issues coming out that really don't matter for policy, but people are starting to make policy based off of culture war issues. That's going to be a problem. I err on the side of freedom. Always have, always will. And whether I come home with my shield or on it, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. And I say that because if you can waste $400,000 approximately, maybe even $500 million, to shoot down an actual threat, and you wait until it's already done its mission before you go ahead and shoot it down, how much of our national debt is incurred on sending money to other countries that we really shouldn't be doing business with, let alone propping up? Now, I understand what the globalized world used to be. We've served that for 70 plus years after World War II. It's now the United States' time to deal with our partners and our trade partners and stick to our side of the globe. That may suck for a lot of other countries. It will. Because they've always expected the United States to go in there and save them. The problem with that mentality is they won't help themselves ever. You know, I've demonized the Orange Man, but the Orange Man was right about one thing. That the world, by and large, needs to start investing in themselves, taking some self-ownership to defend themselves. And at the very least, they need to pay their fair share for the defense industries that we have to prop up to keep the rest of the world safe. I'm not a fan of foreign wars because we keep losing good people. Wars are stupid as hell because it's like fornicating for virginity. There is absolutely no point. We're killing people that we don't actually know are our enemies. And we're putting faith in institutions that have let us down consistently, especially in the last 3 years. Now, I'm not pointing just a finger at Biden. I'm pointing it squarely at the government. Look at the bans that happened in the past in 1994, the assault weapons ban then. Look at the language gymnastics they're trying to do now. Assault pistol? How about a submachine pistol or a machine pistol? Or how about a rifle action pistol? You know, I like that term a little more, and I think I've kind of coined it, but it reminds me of my gunsmith that my dad used a lot before he passed away, Phil Ross. And he was a big 2A guy because, well, he was a gunsmith, but he was also a very big pillar of the community. The man did a lot for my little town. And that seems to be pretty inherent in all the aspects of the 2A community. They're not willing to sit back and let you take advantage of them, but they'll damn sure help you to get your leg up off the ground and get you started. That's where your drive and motivation comes in. And the more I see these bills coming out from more and more representatives, the more worried I get. Because how many times has a bill hit the House or the Senate nationally, and we had turncoats that said they wouldn't endorse such things, and they now are. One of the things that the Fed is going after really hot and heavy that we need to pay very damn close attention to is the registration of firearms. Registration of firearms always leads to confiscation, which always leads to tyranny. You don't believe me? Look at the history examples. Germany, they outlawed firearms right before the Germans started getting really violent in World War II. Look at communist Russia. Before World War II, before the communists took over, they killed everyone they knew that had firearms. If you look at Mao in China, 100 million people died under his reign from famine. And they don't have the 2A either. Our country is blessed to have the Second Amendment to defend all the others. And while the First Amendment is very important, it is one of the pillars of our country, it can't exist without the defense of the Second. The Second is there to remind everyone in Congress and everyone in general that the people still have the power in our country, and that the people still have a say, and that we're getting very rapidly tired of the bureaucratic system coming after law-abiding citizens when you won't find a way to combat crime. Not at all. New Mexico has seen a rise in crime. The United States has seen a rise in crime. Most Democratic strongholds in the Union are seeing an increase in crime beyond what they normally expect. And why is that? It's because we've allowed the people in power to subvert the will of the American people. And I'm trying to collect my thoughts and say this correctly, because what I mean is they are going after a citizen. They hate you. And if you don't believe they hate you, it's a cold water shower. But it's time to come to the realization that the government isn't for us anymore. It isn't for the people, by the people anymore. It's for the lobbyists, for the corporations, and for anyone that is for oppressing the American people. Our last bastions of freedom are being eroded time and time again. If you don't believe me again, go look at YouTube and see what happened to Robski, Mr. Guns and Gear, Brandon Herrera, Donut Operator, all the gun tubers. They were censored. Don't forget that the Twitter files came out, and while they slow-rolled those so that the story died, there's a lot that came out of that. If you do the research, you find out that the government colluded with Twitter to suppress people's free speech. That's illegal. The reason why I think Twitter is in such straits right now is they've lost the funding of the government, because it doesn't seem like Elon's willing to play ball with them. So that is my legislative update. Nothing in the House or the Roundhouse in New Mexico has made it out of committee. There's hearings still on it. The only one I know that was due pass in committee was the magazine ban, which is draconian in its own way in New Mexico, because I know no concealed carry pistols other than a 1911 that carries less than 10 rounds. That is tyranny in its purest form. The handgun is used in more crimes than a rifle is, and the reason why that is so that you can carry a handgun everywhere without being burdened by the weight or the looks or the stares of having a rifle strapped to your chest. Maybe if people did that, there'd be less crime. I say that because the criminal penalties nowadays for criminals are laughable. In New Mexico, it's kind of like cashless bail, meaning that they let you out as soon as they lock you up. And we're seeing more repeat offenders on the streets. And as much as I've pounded on the law enforcement guys, that's not the law enforcement guys' problem. That's the district attorneys that aren't willing to prosecute. That's the judges that are willing to make lenient sentences for extreme crimes or repeat offenders. Now, there's a big problem with our jail system and our prison system. But it can't be fixed if we're just letting everyone out. So I say this all the time to my friends locally, and I said it on this podcast several times. Stay strapped or get clapped. I mean that. Because how many times can we hear about carjackings or home invasions, or just minding your own business at the gas station, filling a gas pump, when some guy approaches you and says, "You will give me your money," and he's very either violent, very forceful, very direct, or he's armed. I'm tired of being a victim. I'm tired of seeing my people, my countrymen, be victims by the government. And time again, we see it again. So it's time to make your stand. Time to ring the bells. I'm still waiting for the next week is when I believe that they'll start, the bills in the roundhouse will start making their way to the floor. They'll start getting through committee hearings. That's where we start showing up in force to start, protesting and making our voice heard for what little it does nowadays. But we still have to do this because these are the only tools we were given. God forbid it gets to the point where we have to open that fourth box, because no one wants that. No one wants to fight this. If you're worth your weight in any way as a human being, you don't want to kill nobody. All you ever wanted to do is be left alone and be able to defend yourself. The government doesn't want you to do that. Like, share, subscribe, Rumble, be great.